I'm Rob Downey, a family practice MD and Institute for Functional Medicine certified practitioner. I'm coming to you from Seaworthy Functional Medicine in Homer, Alaska. Seaworthy exists to help people overcome their health challenges and be fully vital. Where does disease come from? Where do health problems come from? How can we get beyond pills into the next dimension of who we want to be our most healthy? Today, we couldn't be more fortunate than to be joined by Dr. Elena Villanueva, who is a true luminary and a brilliant illuminator of this intersection of health and spirituality and next steps that we can all take. Dr. V, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Downey. I'm so excited to be here today.
Today, the neat sort of energy wave I get to surf with you is that there's a masterclass coming out shortly. And so for our participants who I thank for joining us, you may be fortunate enough to jump on this wave and attend this masterclass that'll be coming out, coinciding with the timing of this interview. And then also today's conversation has standalone value if you access this content as part of the archived Seaworthy podcast library. So let's just jump right in. And as we segue into what you have to share with us, I should note that when I've been fortunate enough to be at this intersection point where a masterclass is created, one of the things I love is for a brief moment in time, all the brilliant people I get to talk to, they're all in my head and my heart at once. And so it's kind of an amazing energy, just all of the collation of information into one place. But could you talk with us today about why you felt it was necessary to pull this masterclass together and start talking to us about where disease comes from and why you're framing this as getting beyond pills?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I first want to start by just saying that we do need to go beyond the pill, beyond treating a symptom, and we need to go deeper into addressing the root causes so that we can get long-term and sustainable healing. With that said, and I like to say this for, especially for the people who don't know me, that this may be their first time hearing me. There's a time and a place for all of it. And, there truly is. And prescriptions and surgeries, I come from a family of physicians and surgeons. It saves lives. Oh my gosh, absolutely. It does every single day. But the problem, the gap where we're seeing in our health model is that because of special interests, that doctors over the last 3 decades have really gone from being scientists and doctors and alchemists and really understanding the body and the mind. And my father was in that generation, right? And he was a physician. He was an ophthalmologist, an oculoplastic surgeon. And I remember him really being the alchemist and really working with the body and understanding and then using the prescriptions as needed and doing the surgery as needed, but also talking with them around the other things that would affect their health. And he was able to be a real doctor. He was able to do what he thought was best for his patients. It's not like that anymore. Doctors have their hands tied behind their backs. They're also coming out of medical school and they have no training in nutrition. They don't have training in in how to find and get to the root cause of these chronic issues. And this has led to a world pandemic of chronic illness. We're seeing more chronic illness than we have ever seen in the last, in our recorded history, right? And when I say chronic illness, what do I mean by that? Because a lot of people, they may not know what that means. That means, very generally speaking, we're talking about if you've been sick for like 2 or 3 or more years with autoimmune disease, significant or severe GI issues, allergies, skin issues, arthritic, conditions, mental health conditions, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, chronic anything that you've had for a long, long time is what we call chronic. And um, and what we've done is we have been collecting data for several years. We've collected thousands and thousands of data points, Dr. Downey, on our clients, tracking them with evidence-based, objective data, so labs, and subjective data, so symptoms, right, and assessment forms. And we go in and we lift the hood, so to speak. We find what the real root causes are of these illnesses, all these chronic issues that they've had for years. And then we put them on a track, on a plan of action to actually correct these issues at their root or roots, right? So that they can get sustainable, long-term, real results, not just taking care of the symptoms. And so that's why we put this masterclass together that's called Beyond the Pill, so that we can educate the public as we've already been and continue to educate other doctors and health practitioners. Now we're educating the public so that they can understand that there are approaches that do work to completely reverse these autoimmune and other chronic health issues. And we want to teach them how to do it, and we want to show them lots of case studies. So we're going to be showing them case studies or stories of our clients who started out with, Parkinson's, or they started out with chronic fatigue, or they started out with psoriatic arthritis, or whatever, a combination of all different kinds of things, and how we've taken them through a process. And by the time that they're finished, their symptoms are virtually gone. All of their conditions are gone.
It's, isn't it just the greatest work ever, the journey you and I get to take with people as they recover from things they felt fatalistic or oppressed by?
It's why it's my passion, as you know, and I know it's yours too. And this is why we get up in the morning. This is why we do what we do. It's because I think there's nothing more precious than being able to show our brothers and sisters that there are possibilities that they didn't know were available to them, right? And when we can see our brothers and sisters come back to a place of wholeness and health in mind, body, and spirit, um, it's kind of selfish. It fills my heart too. That's what I feel that my purpose is here for, is to do everything that we can to help people move out of a state of chronic illness and teach them where the future of medicine is going, and create a bridge so that the people who are seeking this type of care, who are seeking this type of approach, that they can have it, and it's more accessible, more affordable, it's simplified for them. And this way we can help more people and make a bigger impact. We can be better agents of change.
When I've had the good fortune to interview you before, one of the many things I love about your approach is something you mentioned as we were getting ready for today's interview, which is that you're sharing concepts that are critical, that you understand at your sort of mastery level as a practitioner, but you're making them accessible to people in ways that any of us can understand. What do you what's crystallized for you now about your approach? What are some things you can share today that people who attend the summit or people who listen to this can benefit from, that's different than the way you looked at things a year ago, 5 years ago? I know you've talked about parts work and recovering the inner child, the importance of spirituality and energy. So share a couple things with us you think are critical for people to know based on this perspective you've reached at this point, if you would.
There are answers and solutions. You're not broken. The body, the most advanced technology we have is not outside of us. It is inside of us. And even scientists and practitioners now are acknowledging this. We are moving into an era where we are understanding how to apply quantum science. We're understanding that while Newtonian science, the science that we all grew up with, while that is still applicable, it doesn't supersede the quantum. And when we're looking at the quantum, that's basically where we have been able to take what we once thought was spiritual or woo, right? The unseen, and we're able to back it up with science now. So it's no longer spiritual or woo to those who previously would have denied its existence because of that. Now we can back it with science, and we are now able to show our patients and our clients how to access their inner technology, how to access spirit, how to access our unconscious, um, how to become a witness, and develop awareness around our conscious mind or our ego, and how we can upgrade our neurological systems and even our DNA systems, how we can upgrade those to access healing powers that nothing else compares to the healing powers that we have inside of us. And so over the last few years, we've known about these concepts for a long time, and we have incorporated neurological repatterning and rewiring of the body, through thought, teaching people the power of language, which is spoken about much in the Bible, right? Now we have a lot of other science behind language, that connects with a lot of our ancient wisdom. Every word that we speak, that comes out of our mouth, every thought that we think, every belief we have, and every emotion that comes with those carries a tremendous effect on our mind and our body, either allowing us and putting us into a place where we can heal, or taking us into a place of illness, or keeping us in a place where we're not able to heal, right? And so those are some things that we continue to go deeper with, Robert, because that really is the most powerful medicine there is. And that's not discounting that the labs are really important. And let us get this objective, Newtonian approach data, because that's important too. There's a place for all of it. So we're still doing labs, we still gather the data, we're still working with the physical 3D because that's the experience we're having, but helping people to remember who they are, and where we came from, and that we're spiritual beings having a physical 3D experience, and being able to tap back into their power. That's also just as an important of a component of healing as is doing all of the labs and the looking at the genetics and looking at the food and the lifestyle and all of that.
Mm. Do you want to share any recent anecdotes or stories that illustrate or encapsulate this so folks can get a sense of if they participate in the master class, or they, like so many thought leaders, another great thing that I love about this ecosystem you and I practice in is people have different avenues into the work of thought leaders. It can be a book, it can be a master class, it can be working remotely across state lines. So sometimes storytelling is so powerful. Anything recently stand out to you of somebody who's been the beneficiary of your work and the way you do it that would illustrate for folks kind of the vibrance to it, or the transformational aspect, or how it accelerates people's progress?
Oh, absolutely. I've got a couple of them. Um, so one of them is about a client, who is in her 50s, and she did not have a history of diabetes. She was relatively healthy, and we have labs going as far back as 2018, so we can see where her baseline has been. She fairly recently, in the last couple of years, she developed type 2 diabetes and high blood pressure and depression and anxiety, and all of these things started happening with her. And so we took a deep dive to see what was going on. Now, most people would think that, diabetes, is usually a diet related issue, right? It's not always diet related, it can be other things too. So this individual ended up developing all of these symptoms and some of these conditions like the high blood pressure and the diabetes. As we looked under the hood and did additional labs and other things, we really discovered that what was at the root of it, the biggest root of the issue, was stress from her career and her work. And so that invited a whole different approach, right? And so, yes, we did some supplements to help manage blood pressure, which worked very well, and to help stabilize the blood sugar instead of any supplementation. What we did was we did mindset work. We taught this individual how to apply some of the things that she already knew but forgot to apply, down regulation tools to down regulate nervous system. And then we went in like a precision energetic medicine team would do. And we went in and started showing her how to rewire her neurology, her thoughts, her belief systems, her perspective around what she was doing with her work so that she wouldn't feel so stressed. And we have after labs to show her diabetes completely gone, blood pressure back into normal range, all symptoms gone. And so this is a perfect example of how not everything is always because of a physical, it's not always a physical thing causing another, it's not always a physical action causing a physical reaction. This was all mindset and belief systems and perspective, and not paying attention to the stories that she was creating in her mind, which then precipitated into emotion, which then changed all the chemistry in her body, giving her high blood pressure, diabetes, all of these things. And so that's one story that I can think of that's super, super powerful. We actually have a couple of stories like that that are diabetic type stories, that it was really coming from stress and emotions more than it was coming really from a diet and other lifestyle factors.
Beautiful. If that person were on the podcast right now, what's something they'd report about the way they relate to their day, either as a meditative practice or a restorative something they do at the beginning and ending of the day, or what's something the person would say about in real time, on the fly, as they deal with stress of life? What would be a tool they would say, this is something Dr. V and her team gave me that was part of my transformation, if we want to be really granular about it, just as, again, kind of a fun exercise?
I believe that she would say that I learned to recognize my power and to become more aware of the difference between like my conscious mind and my higher self, and becoming more head heart centered, and really giving myself the belief of self-worth, that I am worth taking care of me. And that is what I'm here for. I'm not here to sacrifice myself for everyone else. Even though that, that's faulty programming for all of us, and especially as women, right? So many women, they sacrifice their careers, they sacrifice everything for their spouse and their, and their kids. And at the end of the day, they have nothing left for themselves. And so I feel like it's a becoming more self-aware of maybe any gaps that we need to fill in our self-love and our self-worthiness, to be able to spend more time working on self. And as we do that and we shift our vibrational frequency, the universe, like that's where we start seeing all of the miracles happen, all the serendipity, all the doors opening that we've been praying and asking for. All of those types of things will happen for you. But we need to sit in a space of stillness so that we can hear God speaking to us, because God speaks in whispers. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like we need to give more time to ourselves. And so many of our clients have recognized that. In fact, anyone who goes to our website at modernholistichealth.com, just plugged that one. But anyone who goes there and goes to our testimonials, we've got hundreds of them. And you can read the stories of the people talking about not just the physical shifts, but the energetic shifts, the spiritual shifts, the mindset shifts that they've had, that have just taken them to a completely different level of healing that they never even knew was possible.
So cool. I wanted to share a couple of contextual things our audience might enjoy or benefit from. And so one is a person I took care of who was supplementation and labs and that sort of thing were not changing this person being completely pinned by long COVID. And then when that person underwent the transformation you described around who they are and how they relate to their circumstances and whether or not they were sacrificing who they were meant to be and could be in relationship to creator and the creation, then they had 90% improvement within 30 to 45 days. so so we do have these parallel experiences where when we see this in real time over and over again, there's clearly an energetic holographic fractal transformational shift in response to creator and source that is difficult to describe, but also worth noting that the analytical tool for the Institute for Functional Medicine matrix, figuring out where disease comes from, how to prevent it, how to reverse it, mental, emotional, and spiritual, is deliberately at the center of that tool. And so that's kind of worth noting in terms of the most important things right in front of us, that the folks that created that way of analyzing deliberately did so. So wow. Oh, and then last but not least, one of my favorite authors, David James Duncan, he's got this character from his first novel, The River Why, who's a fisherman living and working with a philosopher. And the philosopher gives him 20 books to think about reading. And he says, well, I can't read all these books. And the philosopher says, just read the one you love. And I think hearing your approach today gives people a chance to resonate with what you care about. And that's kind of what I love about podcasts, is there these doorways, one doorway into the sort of temple of healing of that person, that thought leader. And then they can say, oh, I want that. What Dr. V described, I want that.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like just based on the people that we're working with now, even versus, the people who we've been working with for several years. And when I say several years, they're not sick anymore. They stay with us for their annual blood work and their annual hormone test and, for their wellness. They're staying with us for their wellness, right? Because
Mhm.
we built love and trust with them. We took them from a place of being super, super sick to having a completely different life and reality. And so they stick with us. But those people that we saw back then versus the people that we see now, I'm really seeing a shift. And it's really exciting what I'm seeing.
Mhm.
Back then, I had to create a very kind of like a different approach into introducing our clients to the mindset work, to understanding their conscious versus their subconscious mind, teaching them tools and modalities to downregulate their nervous system, like breath work, like tapping, like meditation. There was more hesitancy back then. Now I'm seeing that people are much more open to it, and it's very, very exciting. They're more open to even the belief of the possibility that that some of why they may be sick is from generational trauma. It wasn't even in their lifetime. It was passed down from maybe a great, great, great grandparent who was in a famine in Ireland who thought he was going to die if he went to sleep. And that's why 6 generations later, this 30-year-old young man can't sleep. Like he's been like that his whole life. And he thought it was a physical thing. Like he tried melatonin, it didn't work, trying all the things. And then we go in and we do this energetic medicine work, and we can go back generations. We can go back in timeline, doing timeline therapy, and we can see the stuff. And there's so much science behind this now that
Mhm.
I feel like more people are more open to it. And I also feel like there's a big evolution happening on the planet right now, and people are just waking up. And so, the combination of the education that's out there, Plus, I feel like people are just, I don't know, I feel like it's just a spiritual awakening that's happening around the planet. People are waking up to have a deeper understanding of who they are and the possibilities that we have here in this 3D experience. And we're able to jump right in with almost all of our clients now, and they're very receptive, very open to it. And we still teach the science and the concepts behind all of these different things so that people can understand it in case it, for some people, if it does still feel very woo for them, we can bring in all the science nowadays. We can tie it to ancient wisdom, which is even really super cool, right? To tie the modern science and go, well, in modern science, this is called somatic therapy for trauma work. However, it's rooted in the ancient wisdom of medical qigong. Like we can go in and we can start tying it all together, which then really helps people open up their perspectives on these other modalities and tools for healing that are just as important as doing, like we talked about, just as important as labs and the food and your sleep habits and things like that. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, as a phrase from Dr. Heidi Hanna, we're wired for safety. As you were sharing that, I thought about how I think it's really important for most of us to come into a next dimension of consciousness or our healing or our path via a doorway we understand and trust, and then see the hallway in front of us and how those two relate in the next room. And so science, spiritual traditions, etc. I think there's a real elegance in connecting those things so that people feel this is a natural progression. And when they're challenged to enter a new dimension, they're stepping from where they are already. And we're honoring where they're coming from as they start. And I share your sensibility that there's a critical mass of change of consciousness, which is making your and my work easier and faster. And it took me so many decades sort of flailing away to learn to cast a fly rod, fly fishing. And I've learned a simple way to help people who've never cast a fly rod get within a day to where it took me 10 years to reach. And so over and over again, we see in all these different domains that there's no cosmic law to suffer and slog, and transformation can be rapid in the hands of a team that can help you see the path forward.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And it's amazing how we're all finding each other too. And, those of us who are aware of this as healers, that we're all finding each other even because as practitioners, just for all of the viewers or all of the people listening, we're no different than you. We just might be further down the road with our accessibility to the knowledge. But we are still human. And sometimes as healers, we'll put ourselves on the back burner and not realize it because we're not being conscious, or whatever. And, I can tell you that, even the doctors have coaches, even the coaches have coaches. I'm doing more, I'm diving into some heavy personal work again this year for 2024. Last year, I did quite a bit of work on my own with a little bit of coaching from some expert coaches, on really focusing on my awareness and how many moments throughout the day can I be aware of, like the watching and listening to my thoughts, like instead of being in it, right? How our mind just goes, being aware and present, fully present. I've worked on that hard for this whole last year. And what I've noticed is continued increase just in that, continued increase in my health metrics, my health markers, my sleep. And I really feel like I'm getting I'm getting a lot of comments from my other colleagues. It's like, what are you doing? Because you look younger, you look more vibrant every time I see you, and I'm going into my mid 50s and I look better now than I did in my 30s. And it's letting go of the things not serving me, recognizing what's not serving me in those unconscious patterns, and having more moments during the day where I'm aware of the unconscious patterns and the thoughts. And as I become aware, I'm able to go, you know what? That keeps giving me that same outcome that I don't want.
Mhm.
I'm going to change that now that I'm aware.
Mhm.
And, and
Mhm.
as I do that, I literally am I feel the inside changing. And just like they say, so within, so without, right? Like,
Mhm.
whatever's going on the inside, you see as a reflection of your reality. And so, yes, yes, yes,
Mm.
there's so much goodness out there for those that are interested in exploring this, because that really is the most powerful medicine we have. And it's our divine birthright to be able to access that. And so, for people to be interested in that, it's very exciting for both of us, right? Because we get to share this type of stuff with them, as a big part of their healing process, from chronic illness, mental health issues, cancer, sleep issues, pretty much anything. And again, it's not the only thing that we're doing, because we are in a 3D experience. So we do want to do the blood work and do the toxin labs and make sure you don't have mold in your body, and or toxins or heavy metals, and make sure that you're eating right for your genetic blueprint type, and that you're getting
Mhm.
enough rest and all of those things. But yeah, it's really interesting to see where medicine is going these days.
Mm. Well, in a moment, our participants will get to hear any thoughts you have that sort of bring it all together, or that you didn't get to share yet. Just two last things to share as the host today, to further expand on the importance of what Dr. V is talking about. One is just to acknowledge a gift from a prior conversation I got to have with you when you were talking about that day. I asked you sort of in this moment, what do you think is the most important? You talked about showing up for the inner child. And subsequent to that conversation you and I did that. And I had presumed this part of me kind of got stuck when I was less than 10 years old. But I remembered a moment where uh, I was um, I was running a power tool, and the person who cautioned me that I was doing it improperly was obviously had a lot of emotional intensity, and 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 I just completely devolved into just a river of tears. I mean, I remember them just pouring down my face, shame and embarrassment. And the part I didn't realize the consequences of is I'm a very strong-willed and pretty fierce person sometimes. And in the moment, I made a vow to myself to never cry again. And then I was pretty effective at that, because the rest of my life, then my marriage, the birth of my children, these really super powerful moments, tears were elicited. And then years later, this author I was talking about, his third novel came out, and I cried as I read that, and read the end of that. And I saw him on a YouTube the other day, and he was crying, talking about his book. And I was chatting with my wife about what you shared. Just so now, in the moment that I feel like crying and I don't cry, I combine your work with Thich Nhat Hanh saying, just anything that happens, just say to it, hello, my precious fill in the blank, I'm there for you. And so I say, hello, my precious kid. Hello, precious me that isn't crying again yet, but I'm there for you. And a lot of us think, oh, that's where the healing comes from. And yeah, those are the areas in that now I experience this serendipity you described, the uncanny experience day to day in the moment of my numbers improving, my sleep, my ability to be gentle and kind and compassionate with others in the moment. And also what Jung described as synchronicity, the uncanny emergence from reality of things that we can't explain, but they're feel our knowing experiences. They're connected in some fashion to taking this inner journey to whoever is the fullest manifestation of who we can be. So really, really great getting to. Well, I'm so glad you're doing this work and all the light you bring. Is there anything you want to share you didn't get to share? And then in a moment, we'll segue into how people can access the masterclass.
Yeah, well, I'm really excited to hear that you did that little exercise that we had talked about last time. Reconnecting with our inner child can be so powerful, because in the quantum realm, which again, for our listeners, quantum science is just, it's another type of science. And a lot of people see the quantum science, like if anyone's getting like any type of degree in quantum physics or whatever, like those are the really smart ones. That's what we used to think, right? Well, it's been simplified over the years, right? And so quantum science is, it's a lot easier to understand. But there is no past, present, and future. That's something that we create. There is no time. That's something that we create. Like we create these boundaries in the 3D world. We have that. And, we have created those limitations, but there really is no past, present, and future. There are multiple timelines going on at the same time. And, in the quantum realm, your 10-year-old self is still around, and your body still can feel what your body felt when you were 10 and someone got very, emotionally intense with their response to how you were using this tool. And you didn't have the tools to be able to process that type of intensity. So that energy was projected at you, and you didn't know how to transmute that energy, and you didn't know how to process that. And so that was in you for all of these years. And yeah, it does affect you. And it creates unconscious patterns and unconscious habits and unconscious reactions, unconscious triggers that will usually show up in our life over and over and over again with different people and different situations. One of mine that I discovered recently, I think this is super relevant, so we'll just talk about this, right? So the first time that I got in touch with my inner child, it really helped me to develop a new and intense level of self-love that I just didn't know that I had, or didn't know that I didn't have. Of course I love myself, I would say. Of course I do. But now that I look back, I really wasn't showing up for myself the way I would show up for everybody else. I was putting myself on the back burner. And when I did a timeline therapy, so that I could understand why I have, when it became conscious, when it came to my consciousness, that I didn't necessarily have all the friendships that I wanted or the relationships that I wanted, that I wasn't as healthy as I could be, that I felt like I was aging, when it came to that. And I realized I really wasn't treating myself the way that I could treat myself. I went in and I did what's called timeline therapy, and I was able to go back to my 3-year-old self. So I discovered through the tools and techniques that we teach in this type of work, I knew that I needed to go back to my 3-year-old self. And I went back to my 3-year-old self, and I saw what was going on in the room. And I saw that I was scared and sad, and I felt alone, and I didn't understand why this was happening with the adults in the room. And I was hiding under the table, under the kitchen table. And my current now self, dropped in that timeline to the little 3-year-old. And I looked under the table, and there she was. And she looked back at me, and I said, "Hey, baby girl, it's me. I'm you." Like 50 years later. And she's like, "Oh my God, I've been waiting for you." And tears just came down my eyes. And I reached up under the table, and I scooped her up, and I picked her up, and I held her. And I just bawled my eyes out in real time. Like, now I bawled my eyes out. I cried so hard because she's so cute. And she was just like all children. They're precious, right? And I was able to see myself that way. And since then, I give myself so much more love. I'm more tender. I'm not so hard on myself anymore. I'm not so self-critical anymore, right? Because we're all doing the best we can. We're all doing the best that we can. Now, recently, as I've been doing this deeper work, just one more example of this type of work, I noticed, so I've had a pattern for a while that I didn't like, and it would come up every now and then. And I finally was able to uncover that pattern through just more conscious awareness. And as I uncovered this pattern, I discovered that this pattern developed probably in my early teens, from some experiences I had with my parents and where I wasn't really able to express myself. And so um, when I was growing up, I was raised by my father in the 70s, and he was an amazing man, super intelligent, super cool dude, right? But trying to raise a girl in the 1970s. And so I grew up with a very masculine figure. I didn't really have the nurturing of a mother, so I didn't have that experience. And the things that I was allowed to really talk about where he would listen to me were things that were relevant. Like, what are we doing with the horses today? We need to change the feed because it's going into the winter time. So take them off of this feed and put them on this feed. Or, like talking about school, my math class, how that was going, or, talking about changing the tires on the car, like the relevant things. I couldn't just have nonsensical conversation about crazy ideas that I had. I couldn't get into that creative space with him because he just couldn't hold space for that. Um, and so as an adult, one of the patterns that I developed, which I've been really moving away from and learning to speak more from my heart, was anytime I had anything to say, I backed everything else. I backed everything up with science, not speaking from my heart. Now, that has served me well to grow this beautiful practice that we have and helping so many people. And 2 years ago, I started getting some really big downloads that I needed to start speaking from my heart too. And and that has recently changed. I recently discovered or rediscovered this same pattern on a deeper level. So now I'm actually able to have conversations with friends and colleagues that I wouldn't allow myself to have in the past. Talking about just creative ideas. Not talking about business or explaining the science behind something that I had to say. And that continues to bring healing in my body. Like, I continue to sleep better now that I'm more comfortable, speaking about creative things. It actually affects your mental health, your physical health. And I'll just finish it with this. We have many facets to our human condition. We are a mind, we are a body, and we are a spirit. There are many facets to who we are and how the different facets of us all fit together to give us this human experience. And the future of medicine is addressing all of these facets of who we are. It's not just about taking a pill. We're going beyond the pill. And as more of us continue to do that, and we have a conference coming up this year where we're teaching physicians and we're teaching doctors how to bring these types of approaches for healing. This is what's going to help change the trajectory of the chronic illness pandemic that we have on this planet. And this is where people are going to find their deeper long-term healing. And so thank you for inviting me to be able to share my passion today.
Such a privilege. Let's close then with two pieces. How can people access the masterclass, which will be in the show notes, including things they can click on or that sorts of thing, and then also just a repeat reminder of your website for using this as archive content over time.
Yes, I would say if you want to know a little bit more about who we are, check us out on our website at modernholistichealth.com. We also have a wonderful YouTube channel, and we showcase case studies. We talk about, like, we do lab interpretations for the general public so they can understand how to interpret their different labs. We teach so much great content there, and we also have some interviews. And then for our Beyond the Pill Masterclass, definitely check in the notes, and check in the description here for this podcast, because there's a link there. And you want to click on the link and register so that then you're getting all the updated notifications of when it starts. We typically are launching on a Sunday evening, and we go for 5 days. So each evening for 5 days. And I am excited to see you there. I hope that you were inspired today. And please remember that you're not broken. There are answers and there are solutions, and you can transcend almost any symptom, condition, or disease. Don't listen to what the medical establishment has told you, because they don't know yet, but they're learning, and they're going to catch up probably in the next decade.
Awesome. Thanks a million, Dr. V.
Thanks for joining us for the Seaworthy podcast. Seaworthy exists to help people overcome their health challenges and be fully vital. If you think we've earned it, please consider giving this podcast a like, subscribing, and giving us a 5-star rating on the platform of your choice. Thanks.